Hey everybody, I'm Mr. Olympia, and in my trading career, I've made a lot of money. My account is currently at about 11 million Robux. I've owned Sparkle Time Fedoras, I've owned Dominuses, I've owned Valkyrie Helms, I've owned Rares. I've owned it all, and I'm going to show you today how you can own it too. But before we begin, please subscribe, it helps me a lot. This video is intended to help a complete beginner begin their trading career. Before the advice though, I just want you to know that trading takes a long time. It takes a lot of conscious effort. And so if you're not willing and committed and ready to put in the time and to put in the effort, just don't start. You might end up having wasted a lot of time, and you might even end up with items you don't really even like because you wanted to trade and then you gave up. If you intend to give up because you make a bad trade or maybe you get scammed and it makes you want to give up, it's understandable, but if you think you might give up later, don't bother with trading. It's just going to waste your time. For those people, just enjoy Roblox for what it is. It's a fun game. Now for the rest of you who think you're up to the task, let's get into the first tip. My first tip is to begin with several smaller items as opposed to one larger item. What I mean is, if you have, let's say, 3K to begin trading with, instead of buying one of these Silverthorn Antlers, which is just about 3K, it might be in your best interest to buy 3 1K items, like this Gucci wide brim hat here. If you wanted to get really into the nitty-gritty, and if you wanted to really get into the details of it and do a wise thing, I would even suggest that you get one 1K item and 2 more unique 1K items instead of the same 1K item 3 times. This is because if you run into someone that doesn't happen to like this wide brim Gucci hat, well, if you have this and these goggles and this egg, which are all about 1K, you can still trade that person. Whereas if you had 3 of this item that they didn't happen to like for whatever reason, you just couldn't trade them. I'm not really going to go too in-depth as to why this is a good idea, why you wouldn't want just one larger item. Just know that it unlocks a lot of different circumstances and a lot of different trades for you to send and receive, and having one item can sometimes handicap you a little bit. As you get richer, as you have more value, you can get one item. If you get big and want a Sparkle Time Fedora, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, this is your trading journey. This is just my advice to you. Have a couple of items instead of just having one. If you want to get into the nitty-gritty details as to why, if you want more advanced trading tips, I'll be making videos on that in the future, and you can look out for those. For now, just trust me. I do know what I'm talking about. My second tip is to beware of scammers, / you will probably be scammed. If you're just starting trading now, I'm going to assume you're a little bit younger, and I don't mean to imply that young people are dumb or anything, but you are a bit more naive than you think you are. I was scammed quite a few times when I was younger, until finally it just clicked for me not to trust anyone ever, no matter what. And since then, I haven't been scammed a single time. Now maybe you're a fast learner and maybe you will never be scammed. I mean, that's really up to you. If you're careful, you don't have to worry about it. For most of you, I'm going to suggest that if someone else can put you into a position where they can scam you out of your items, they will do it. They will. I don't care if they're your friend. Scammers in Roblox are prevalent, they're common, and they're clever, and they're going to use a myriad of tactics. There's 100 ways to scam people. And you probably will encounter all of them at some point. I'll give you just a few of the more common scamming methods here, and look out for that video on the more advanced scamming methods later so that you can look out for those. The first is what are called phishing links. It's something that will, if you click it, download itself onto your computer and give the scammer access to everything. They can take your items, they could even take your account. Roblox is pretty good about account recovery. They're not so good about getting your items back. Your account has a 1 lifetime rollback. So if you lose all your items, you can roll back once. After that, you're on your own. I would suggest if you lose, 5K or 10K, don't roll back. If you lose 100K, consider rolling back. If I were to lose 10 million right now, I would definitely roll back because I haven't used mine yet. So if you're serious about trading and you think you'll get rich later, it might be worth taking a 5 or 10K hit or even a 30K hit so that you can save the rollback for potentially you losing, 500K later. Something else scammers will do is they'll pretend to be your friend. They will play the long game, have conversations with you, play games with you so that you trust them. And then they'll say something like, hey, why don't we share items? Or hey, why don't you let me play on your account? Something like that. And because you think you're friends, you might be tempted to trust them. Don't do it. Just trust me. Don't do that. As I said, if someone can make off with your items, they will. They will. If someone is asking that you do something that would compromise your account safety or your item safety, just tell them you don't do that. I don't borrow items. It doesn't seem like a good idea. Sorry, I don't lend money to family and friends. It's just a bad idea. The best part about telling them no, sorry, I don't do that, is it's actually completely within the Roblox terms of service. account sharing, item sharing is actually against the Roblox rules. I don't know that you get in trouble for it, but you definitely could. So by telling them no, not only are you keeping your items safe, keeping them from getting scammed, but you're also following Roblox rules and avoiding getting in trouble on that end as well. For now, stay safe, be wise, and look out for that scamming video that I'll put out in the future. My third tip is to learn the vocabulary of trading. Trading has a language of its own beast, and if you jump in, you might start to get confused with all the acronyms and all the weird vocabulary that you just don't know yet. You'll learn it with time, it just takes time, so don't get too stressed out. I'll give you a couple of the most common ones here. I'll make a comprehensive video on Roblox vocabulary, trading vocabulary in the future. For now, here's a couple of the most common ones. The first is OP. This stands for overpay. So for example, if I said I wanted an overpay or an OP on my intern shades here, since they are worth 190k value, it means I want 191k or 195k. It means I want more than they're worth. You're overpaying for them. You might ask why you would ever OP on something, and I would say for the most part don't. But on occasion, if the item's rare enough or if you want it bad enough, it is acceptable to OP for things, and it can actually be a good thing to do. The second acronym I want you to know is LB, or lowball. LB stands for lowball, and it's the opposite of OP or overpay. It just means that you want to send less than the item's worth. So if I were to use these interns as an example again, if someone was to send a lowball on these, it means they would send 189k, or something under 190. Typically, you're going to be sending lowballs on items. This is really where your value comes from. But if someone says, dude, you're LBing me, they mean you're not sending them as much value as they want, or you're not sending them as much value as their items are worth. Don't lowball people too much. It's sort of just disrespectful and bad etiquette. If you want a 10k item for like 1k, it's also just a waste of your time because no one is ever going to accept that trade. Third vocabulary word you should definitely know is projected. This is when someone hoards an item. They have a bunch of copies of the same item, and it's not a very expensive item. Let's say, for example, it's a 5k item, and they have 30 of them. Well, once they have 30 of them, they decide, well, that's enough, and they buy a 31st. But when they buy it for way more than it's worth. This makes the wrap of the item shoot way up and make it look like it's worth more than it is. It's really only worth 5k, but because they bought a copy for 1,000,000 Robux, its wrap is now like 100k. And so they'll send trades with this item that's actually worth 5k that looks like it's worth 100k for, 30k. And people think they're getting a 70,000 win because, oh my gosh, I'm getting sent a $100,000 item for my measly 30k, and they accept. What they don't realize is, over time, the wrap of that item will begin to normalize and come back down to 5k again. So pretty much, they just lost 25k thinking it was a win. It might sound kind of confusing, but let me give you an example. This is the Octopus's Garden item. Its wrap is currently 77k. You may have even had this inbound if you're watching this within reasonable time of this video's being published. This item is not worth 70k. I actually got this item inbound several times from the same guy, as you can see here on the side. He sent several times, and it looks like a massive win. This item's worth 55k at the moment, and it looks like this is worth way more. You'd think, oh my gosh, this is too good to be true, and you instantly accept, only to realize this item's gonna go back down. And I just lost a really good item. As you can see here, it was selling, anywhere from 10 to 20, and then all of a sudden someone bought it for 1,000,000, shooting the wrap up to 70k. I assume it was because the person that did this had several of them and wanted to pawn them off and make a ton of money at once. The trouble is, as you can see here on the chart, it's normalizing again. It's selling for more than it was before, but it's going way back down. See here, its recent sales are even actually where it was before, around 20k. If someone accepted this item and didn't trade it off immediately, they would lose all of the value as it went right back down to where it was before. Another word you should know is the word sharking, or to be sharked. This is just when someone makes their item seem like it's worth way more than it is, and they make your items seem like they're worth way less than they are. People on Roblox are very good with their words, especially when they begin trading, and so they might use their words to try and con you out of your items or to make you believe that they're not really worth what they're worth. We'll get into this in a minute, but don't discuss trades. Don't let people shark you. Tattletale. Let's say you have Tattletale like this. It's worth 370. Don't let someone tell you, oh, it's bad demand, or my item is way better demand, or there are less of my items, so it's actually harder to get, or there's 100,000 things they could say to make their item seem better than yours and to make yours seem worse than it is. Don't listen to them. Send a trade. Don't discuss trades. We'll get into that in a minute. Finally, there are a ton of acronyms with Roblox trading that you're just not going to know at first. You'll learn them over time. But if someone said to you right now, hey, I'm going to send you GBTH, would you know what that meant? Well, you might not. but it's an acronym so that people don't have to type out the entire name of their items every single time. GBTH in this case means Green Banded Top Hat, as you can see here. If you ever run into an acronym that you don't know the meaning of, you can come to ROBLOX.com and use their item search feature and just type the acronym in, and you'll see, what is IV? Oh, Ice Valkyrie. That makes sense, right? Over time, you'll begin to learn the acronyms, what they represent. If you ever get lost, you can use this search feature. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to ROBLOX.com because you don't trust it, or if you're on mobile or something, you can use this little menu here in the Trade Hangout and type in GBTH, and again, it will pull up, it'll auto-populate the item that's being referenced. Just as a final example, just in case you don't get it, if someone said, hey, I want your bib, you don't know what bib is. B-I-B? Oh, my black iron bucket. That makes sense. Now I know the acronym. You'll learn them eventually. Take the time to look them up so that you learn them. My fourth tip is that you send trades and that you do not use an age-restricted trade account. I cannot tell you how many times I've run into someone who says, hey, I want to begin trading, where do I start? And I only discover later that their account says that they're 12 years old and they can't even trade someone without having to add them as a friend. Trading already takes forever. If you have to add everyone you trade as a friend before even attempting to make a trade with them, it's going to take way too long. Find a way to use an account that's not age gated. I highly recommend that you do that. But aside from that, just send trades. You're never going to get anywhere if you don't send trades. It's also bad etiquette to just expect other people to send trades to you. You are responsible for your value. You're responsible for your items, and if you're not sending, you're not trying hard enough. As a rule of thumb, I try and keep at least 100 trades outbound at all times. That might be a little excessive. I do have a lot of items though. You should pick a number. Maybe it's 10 or 25 trades outbound at all times, and stick to it. I want this many outbound at all times, no exceptions. If you send frequently, if you counter frequently, you'll get somewhere. This is my fifth and final tip for this video. I've taught you to have several items instead of having one. I've suggested that you beware of scams and projected item. I've suggested that you learn the vocabulary of trading, and also that you send many trades. But there's one thing that I touched on a little bit earlier that I said I would come back to. Do you remember when I was talking about sharking and how people will use their words to convince you that your items are worth less than they are? And now I said I'd get back to it in a minute. People at Trade Hangout are very good at using their words. And when you send them, let's say, my black iron bucket, they might say, well, that's a pretty good item and its demand is good, but my item's demand is better. Or, well, there are less of my item than of yours, so mine's actually harder to get. Or, look at the proof, so my item gets better OPs. Or on and on and on. There's 1,000 things they'll tell you to try and get you to believe them that your item's worth less than it is and that theirs is worth more than it is. This is why I just AFK at Trade Hangout. I do not discuss trades. It's a waste of time. Now, don't get me wrong, a little bit of discussion is necessary. I mean, you need to know which of your items they want, so you can discuss that. But at some point, you just need to say, okay, I'm gonna send, please counter, and if they counter, be willing to counter them back again. Don't let them sit there and talk to you about how, well, your item's actually bad, and all this junk. All it's going to do is lead someone to getting offended. These guys have big egos sometimes. They're gonna get mad at you, they might block you. It's just not worth the waste of time. It's not worth arguing. Just send, post and ghost. Just send an AFK, be willing to counter. It's really that simple. It's not easy to trade, but it's very simple. That's all for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe, click like down below, putting more content up like this in the future. And if you want to get into the more nitty-gritty details and advanced trading tactics, you can look out for videos like that. Remember, trading is meant to be fun. Remember to have fun, and I'll see you next time.